So I just took this tram line here to the end of the line, the number 14 line. Maybe I'll hop right back on it to go back. I guess it leaves in 5 minutes. The end of the 14 line. Let's check it out. So there's what a train looks like before everybody gets back on. It's very wet, so you can't see out that well. One general comment I'll make before we take off is just that you're supposed to buy a ticket, but I haven't seen anybody checking tickets the whole time we've been here on any tram. Just saying. But we've got ours if we need to. We got a 3-day, 72-hour pass. So here we are making a loop, and we're going to go back into the old town. So these newer parts are built outside, and sometimes it gets a little higher in elevation as you go away from the downtown, but it's nothing drastic. So we're going to be heading back into the old town. And here's what your typical station looks like. And it's a good thing it has a roof to it, because you need that to get out of the rain. They also have buses that run on the same catenary system as the trams. Stop at the same stops. They have higher numbers, I've noticed. And here's another rubber-tired bus going the opposite direction. And then here's a tram. And they can pull up right behind whatever stopped in front of them. And make tight turns. Sun's about to go down. We're in Lowenplatz. Alright, let me try to find my hotel here. More trolley action. Strasse. Here's a map of the tram system of Zurich, and that's Lake Zurich on the lower end, but I'm going to try to crack the code of how the lines are numbered and if it makes any sense at all, but just like trams seem to go every which way. So this is what I was staring at on my phone, the map of the Zurich tram system, and this is it closer up. I was trying to make sense of it all, and the way this system is numbered and the routes going everywhere, I think even former Zurich College grad Albert Einstein wouldn't be able to figure out the numbering system. And I also tried to use Google Maps when I was there, and it drills down to the streets, which is great, but then it just shows you that there's a tram stop, but it doesn't say what is stopping where. So you're kind of at a loss if you are going to try to use Google Maps. You've got to use something else. So since I got back, one thing I discovered was this website, and if you downloaded this to your phone, I think it would be much more helpful, map.search.ch, and you can click on a station and then it'll show you what lines stop at the station and where they go to, which is kind of what you need. Here's another simplified color-coded form for the system. And to me, it's like taking a rack of billiard balls and then hitting it, and then the balls going every which way. That's how I would say the system is organized. And so I've color-coded the lines according to billiard balls. And the number 8 ball, that's this line that goes northwest to southeast through downtown. And one line you should know about if you're flying in and you want to use just mass transit, don't take cabs, take the number 10 tram from the airport. That's the one you want. You fly into Zurich Flughafen. That's what airport is in German. And then there's 2 lines. There's another line, line 12. Don't take that. It won't take you anywhere near the downtown. Just the number 10. And it's really easy to use. Once you get a ticket, figure out the ticketing system. So if you're from the US and you're used to some of the smaller systems like Portland, Oregon, Zurich is set up sort of the same way, where you have lines that start outside of town, go through the downtown, and then go out the other way. So you can look at Zurich as kind of that type system, only it's like Portland on steroids, the number of trams going around. And as in Zurich, in Portland, the airport is north and east of the downtown, and there's a tram line that goes there. A little more extensive of a tram system would be San Francisco Muni, which has lines that all sort of converge on Market Street as it goes into downtown. I put these systems on in the US just because I think it's a neat way to see a city, to be on the surface rather than taking underground lines. For example, in San Francisco, you'd have BART, but a lot of it's underground when you're in the city. And I just like to be on the ground so I can look out and see what's going on, which is the same reason I like trams in Europe. So some of the key destinations you might try to find on the Zurich system, going clockwise, well, there's the central part where all the lines converge next to the main train station, which is called the Hauptbahnhof. That's what it's called in every German-speaking city. It means main train station or Union Station. And then if you look over to the right, there's a line at Polybahn, Berg Station, and Berg is mountain in German. Anyway, it's like a incline railroad, runs on a cog system. It sounded interesting. We didn't have enough time when we were in Zurich to find that, but I wanted to go to that. We did do a short incline that's closer into downtown. I showed that in a different video to get to Einstein's Locker. And then if you go south, there's lines that go along both sides of Lake Zurich. And if you take the line that goes on the east side of the northern part of Lake Zurich and you got off at Hochgasse, I think that's near the Le Corbusier house. That's the closest station. And I just highlighted a couple more. The one on the left, Crematorium. What a name for a tram stop, but they have that on the system. And then the Museum for Gestaltung is like a museum of design, which sounded interesting. And the whole area to the west and northwest of downtown Zurich is an interesting, artsy, crunchy area. So we went to a store there, but we mostly walked because we couldn't really figure out which tram to take and what was the best one to take. And I indicate that the number 10 from the airport comes down and it stops at the Hauptbahnhof. So you don't have any trouble going past the Hauptbahnhof and not knowing where to get off. It's the end of the line. So I have previously been to various parts. My wife and I like Central Europe a lot. So we've been to these 4 cities that all have tram lines, and we've ridden the tram in each one of them: Prague, Krakow, Poland, Budapest, Hungary, Vienna, Austria. And the ones in Prague and Vienna, we actually just got on the tram just to go for a ride to the end of the line to see whatever there was to see. And we liked it so much in Prague that we came back into the city and we went out to the other end of the line. And so we sort of did the same thing with Vienna. Did we do this also in Berlin? I'm not sure. We might have just taken the subway in Berlin. In Germany, we've tended to take the subways that they have either in Berlin or Nuremberg, different places. Munich, I think we mostly just walked around. But all these cities have tram lines. And they all have, except for Krakow, they all have subway lines also. And so Zurich is right in the mix. And knowing that Zurich would have a good transit system, I wanted to check out their system. So here's that number 10 coming into the Hauptbahnhof. And in another video I did, I go into the Hauptbahnhof and walk around there and show all the trains coming in there. It's really a transit hotspot, constant busy tram action. And there's the little tram stop outside of the train station. So you have to walk across the street to get in the train, but it's right there. And what a difference it is after we had been in Switzerland and Italy after that, and then coming back to the US, and then I flew out to LA for a business trip, and I went to the LA Union Station, and there was a fair amount of activity inside the station, but when you came out, there's no activity outside. And I walked through downtown LA and I saw very few people. It was an eerie sensation, especially since the weather was so nice, as opposed to when we were in Zurich. It rained one of the 2 days we were there. But people were still out and going every which way. So a lot more activity in Europe than in American cities, sadly. So one thing I would also recommend, if you don't want to trust your Wi-Fi connections in Europe, if you're visiting from North America, I would go ahead and get one of these maps. This is a plasticized map, and it's good because it doesn't get crunched up in your backpack or whatever, and it shows the tram lines and the street network, and it's pretty good. It covers most of the area you're going to be in the main downtown part of Zurich. So I should have sprung for this. I've gotten this type of map for other cities, and I would recommend it for Zurich. So we did wind up doing a couple of tram rides. My wife and I took the line that I outlined in blue. We went to the end of the line and then came back. And then another time I got on another line and just went out to the end of the line on the yellow line and then came back just to see what was going on. That's what I showed in the first part of this video, was riding on that tram line. Really not anything really exciting to see, but just to sort of get a feel for the city, what I like to do. So one of the interesting things, just looking at trams and everything, is that this one has an advertisement for Robert Kennedy College, which I'll bet most of us Americans have never heard of, but they have that in Zurich somewhere. This is right outside the Hauptbahnhof. And then they do cover some of their trains in advertising, just like in the US. And their main street, where all the high-end shopping, it's actually called Bahnhof Street because it comes up from the Lake Zurich shorefront, comes up towards us to going north, and then behind us is the Hauptbahnhof, the main train station. But this is literally translated, it's Bahnhofstrasse, it's train station street, but that's where all their high-end stores are, and they have trolley lines that go down this street. That's what I showed in one of the previous clips. So this is a website that I subscribe to, and I found it interesting when I was talking about LA and there being no people and everything. This guy, he goes around to different transit systems, and he reviewed a new extension to Milwaukee's little tram system. And one thing he just sort of remarked on in passing, wasn't the main point of his video, but he felt like downtown Milwaukee didn't have many people on, and I think he was the only one, or maybe one of two people riding on their trams. And he just said, there's highways cutting through town, and who wants to live near a highway? So I thought that was a good point. You can have a great tram system, but if you've also got highways cutting through your downtown or around your downtown, like in LA, it just makes it less desirable as a place to live, and you're going to have less people on the street. So you can do whatever you can try to do with light rail or a tram system, but first step is not having highways cutting through your downtown. So when we were in Zurich, I was mentioning that the first day we were there, it was rainy, and the whole weekend it turned out that there was this international bike race going on, and the one day Saturday where it was rainy was for women, and then the next day Sunday was for the men. And I showed the clips from the men's race the next day, which was a nicer day, but this is looking east, and there's a bridge that goes across the Limmat River that goes into Lake Zurich, and the riders, they had a route where they would go around the downtown several times, and here the female riders are coming across the bridge. It was really rough for them because sometimes it was raining very heavily and the roads were very slick, and sometimes they're stone streets, which makes it extra slippery, so it wasn't easy for them. And here's a close-up of them. See, it's got kind of like they had to ride across a cobblestone street, so you better have backup bikes with fresh tires because you might puncture tires going across streets like this. But you can see, even on a rainy day in Zurich, big crowds, people cheering. They didn't have to have sunny weather to be out on the streets in Zurich. So it was nice to see. And here's the next day, and this is a clip from the other video I did about the men's bike race that was doing the same thing the next day. And one thing I'll point out in this video that I noticed after I did the video was here there are tram lines that are run on this street, but Zurich is so good about they cover over the tracks with this padding that's seamless with the street, so you can still make it a bike-friendly street for a day or a weekend. So I thought that was cool. And there were tons tons of people there. And since that line that I just showed was out of service because of the bike race and some other lines where we did wind up doing some walking. But when you do walking, when you don't have the transit system to get on, you do discover things. So it was actually nice. We didn't mind doing a walk back to our hotel from the main touristy area where there were a lot of tourists. It was kind of nice as we walked away. It got a little more spread out, less people, and you could observe the architecture more, which I thought was cool. And this is always a pedestrian-only street, and it's on a Sunday. I imagine on weekdays it's more crowded. It's still a fair amount of people. We stopped at a Starbucks on this street and just continued walking north along this street. And then by doing that, you have more of a chance to look up and observe the architecture. And I found everything interesting. I just by doing this, I think Zurich grew on me more and more, and I liked Zurich more and more. And one thing I commented on one of the other videos is when you're looking out over the city where we were at the technical university where Einstein's locker was, and you look down over the city, you notice that it's mostly a low-rise city. No skyscrapers, hardly any, which is more typical in Europe. More like Washington, D.C. And a lot of the buildings are interesting. I don't know what architectural style you would call this. It looks sort of a little Dutch revival. I don't know, some kind of Victorian. It was interesting, though. And these buildings along this street were interesting to me. Wouldn't have noticed if we were on a tram, but did notice walking. And this one building has kind of a decorative roof that projects out perpendicular to the main roof. Just interesting. And I would describe this sort of as a combination of Romanesque and Art Deco. Just beautiful buildings, but one of many. It's like when you're in some architecturally rich cities like this, I think a lot of people don't take note of individual buildings like this, but if you put them by themselves in a small town anywhere in the US or in Europe, they'd be the main building. They would be a standout. So here it's just in a row of buildings and looking down. Really neat buildings. And they have newer buildings too that blend in with the old and are well done. Building I thought was sort of a Nouveau Art Deco building, much newer than the Art Deco or Art Moderne era, but made to look older and really cool. And Zurich is a financial capital, so there's a lot of high-paying jobs in this city and buildings to match the people who work in them. And this Jewish temple stuck out because it was different from the rest. I like the horizontal banding. And I looked it up. It's the Synagogue Zurich Lowenstrasse, originally built in 1884, and then they built an addition onto it. Still an active temple, which is nice to see. So finally, I'll mention that when you are in Zurich, it's good to get like what we got, which was a 72-hour pass, which you take with you on the trams or whatever mode of transport you want to take that's public. This card covers everything. Suburban trains, trams, or boat rides on Lake Zurich. I don't remember how I got the case. There's a nice woman at the airport who showed us how to buy our tickets in the machine, and she might have given us the case to put the ticket into. So as I mentioned, one of the things you can use the transit pass is to take a boat ride on the Lake Zurich. So I'll show that next, and thanks for watching. Waiting for our boat. Take a mini excursion on beautiful Lake Zurich here. We've got nice weather today. It's on a Sunday, so it's quieter. Yesterday it was teeming, even though it was raining all day. So this will be us, the mini lake cruise. Just beautiful homes here along the lake. sides of the lake. Beautiful houses along the west side of the lake. I'm going to say the lake runs north-south. Double check. This is, it's all covered with graffiti now. Maybe they're gonna fix it up to be something new. A real graffiti explosion here.